not but observe the level of disrespect that the Minister for Energy showed to Ghanaians. I observed the sense that they don't care as to how Ghanaians feel. But to the substantive issues themselves, he indicates that anybody who is interested in publishing doom, so he thinks that there's doom, so he should go ahead and publish the load shedding. You see, when you have a situation where you have a contract between a utility and yourself, and the contract is that I will pay my bills and in return you provide me with service, it is only incumbent on both parties to respect their terms of agreement. Should anything change, there must be some level of how do I put it? Level of concern from the person who is not meeting the various obligations in the contract. Now, Ghanaians are having to go through power curtailment. They have come to terms with that. That look, whether they like it or not, they are getting their power being switched off now and then. But it is not done in a very organized manner. And therefore, they are unable to plan their lives around those, curtailment. So they are asking you that, look, please, all I'm asking, they are publish a timetable so that I'll know when I am supposed to go off. So that, for example, if my kid has to do some homework, I can make the kid do it before the lights go off. Or if I have some medication that I need to put in the fridge, and within that period, the fridge will not be available because the lights will be off. I can make alternative arrangements to save that. And if Ghanaians are asking you this, and the only way to respond to them is to say that they are doomsayers and that they wish evil for this country, that can be just be the mark of somebody who thinks that he's entitled to rule and that his source of power is divine. The mentality of a monarch. It can only come from such a person. But if you know that your source of power comes from the same people who are asking you that, in as much as you are unable to even deliver on your promises, that make sure that you give me a timetable to be able to follow to make my life a bit more manageable. And you can look at them and tell them the words, use the words that he used. That is very unfortunate. Now, his second aspect that he talks about has to do with the fact that the current situation cannot be compared to that of John Mahama. You see, when you are making an analysis, you do it within a context. In the case of John Mahama, he inherited many years of underinvestment. Go back and look at your history. We have had situations of power curtailment, even in 1983, between 1994 and 96. We had it in 2003. We had it again in 2006 to 2008, before even John Mahama came in. And in all this, it had to do with power supply deficits. Indeed, you recall that under KUFUOR'S government in 2006-2007, when the power crisis became so serious, and government was always shifting the post and telling us when they were going to resolve the problem, the then Minister for Information went to Parliament and said that by the 31st of September, the doomsday was going to end. Little did she know that September does not have 31st. It was still the same period that a group of pastors went to AKUFO-ADDO to pray that the rains should come and AKUFO-ADDO, the levels of the dam should go up to be able to allow AKUFO-ADDO to generate more power. So between even that 2006 until John Mahama took over power, one of the things that was very clear was that there was no investment that was done. All that we did was just to wait for water to, the level of water at AKUF0-ADDO to go up, and that we can then, what the technical term is, to overdraft, then to overuse the dam to be able to produce power to fill the deficit that we had. But as a responsible leader, he said, look, if I take the reins of power, I need to first admit that I will inherit assets, but I will equally inherit liabilities, and I must accept both. So he took responsibility and said, I take full responsibility for these actions, and that I will go ahead and fix it. And God willing, what happened was that by 2015 ending, he had fixed it. Fast forward, we come into 2000, and in fact, the fixing was not just done by virtue of the fact that he increased the generation capacity. He also knew that there was a chronic problem over the years of indebtedness of the energy sector, particularly the power subsector. And therefore, there was the need to also find a way of, one, retiring the debt that had been accumulated over the decades, and two, ensuring that new debts were not occasioned. So what did he do? For the old debt, he decided that, look, I was going to introduce a law known as Energy Sector Levy Act, that's known as ESLA. That was supposed to create source of funding that will retire the total indebtedness, or what we call the legacy debt. That was the first aspect. The second aspect of it was to ensure that, look, one of the areas that we have challenges in terms of creating the debt in the whole value chain was the distribution end. So he then took advantage of the Millennium Development Challenge, the Compact 2, to introduce two projects. The first project was known as the ECG turnaround, operational turnaround project. And then we had the NEDCO operational turnaround project. So these are the two projects to improve on the efficiency, both technical efficiency and commercial efficiency of the two utilities, who were the distribution end of the value chain. What did this government do? With that particular one, all they did was that just based on a very simple procurement process that was underpinned by greed, corruption, self-gain. We had to be denied of that money because US decided to withdraw its funding for it, and therefore ECG and NEDCO were not being retooled. Two, the energy sector levy that was supposed to retire the debt, unfortunately, when this government came, in as much as they, notwithstanding the fact that they had bastardized the introduction of that law when they were in opposition, came and decided to increase the tenure of that law. That law was supposed to be for 5 years. In the minds of John Mahama and his team in between 2013 and 2015, they had thought that, look, in 5 years, which was supposed to end in 2020, that we will be able to, the money we're going to get, we will be able to retire the legacy debt. And therefore, by December 2020, the Energy Sector Levy Act would have been abolished. This government comes and increases the tenure from 5 years to 10 years. It goes on further to ensure that the receivables were collateralized and bonds were issued, a 6-year bond and a 10-year bond were issued to a tune of $10 billion to retire a total legacy debt of about $2.4 billion. As I speak to you now, what has happened is that the legacy debt has not only it has actually quadrupled. And so the level of indebtedness at the energy, in the power subsector has become very terrible. So because of these two factors, you have a situation where a government who comes into power, and for 7 solid years, all they did was to bastardize the ESLA and then to bastardize the issue of the Compact 2. And so, as we speak today, the sector is so indebted. The sector has also consumed all the extra, or what they call the excess capacity. And that, as we speak, we are now in serious crisis. So when NAPO makes the statement that for them, they should compare their period, they should state just one single intervention that they introduced that kept the lights on for 7 going to 8 years. The interventions that were put to ensure that the lights were on for the 6 and 7 years was based on the interventions that were made by John Mahama and his team between 2013 and 2016. So when he makes that statement, I get sad about it. But you see, as I told you earlier on, these are people who do not respect us. These are people who think that they have the right to rule. You recall that at one point, one of now the Minister for Communication had said that GMI, which simply meant that they were taking, the rest of us were like aliens, and they had the right to rule, and that they were taking back their country. This is the result of taking back what you call their country. And so, yes, this will be my comments on this issue.
Before I come to the issue of the power crisis and request for a timetable, they've always insisted that the situation we find ourselves in currently, which he says is 300 times better than what happened under John Mahama, is because of, at least they have managed the sector better, that yours was as a result of a poor management of the sector. How do you respond to that?
No, that's exactly what I just said. I said, look, the 7 years of lights being on was based on the interventions that were done by John Mahama. And that's why I'm challenging the energy minister and whoever speaks on behalf of the state when it comes to the energy sector, that they should just take one, I don't need two, one intervention that they have put in place to ensure that the lights have been on this. The only thing they have done is that the credit that had been built as a result of proper financial arrangement, proper investments, have all been consumed within the 7 years. And now, instead of also improving on the investment that had been initiated by John Mahama, they did not do. And now we are now running out of luck. And so, what we are experiencing now is because of the fact that the investments of John Mahama, because they were not continued, we now are running back into problems. So, assuming that this current government was minded to have continued with the interventions John Mahama was introduced, we will not be having this problem. So for anybody to tell you that, the experience that we got under John Mahama is worse off than now, you must remember that one, John Mahama only inherited a problem. And the problem was that he had many years and decades of underinvestment. He resolved that. This government, instead of continuing to ensure that we don't also then go back to the whole vicious cycle of underinvestment, decided not to invest. And all they did was to run the sector based on PR. And this is where we have finally found ourselves in.
Now, as far as you understand, because he seems to have been suggesting, even in his answer to the issue of a timetable, that there's a certain unpredictability that cannot be accounted for by a timetable. What is the problem with that is causing the power outages as far as you know?
Look, so first and foremost, let me talk about his predictability issue. Look, even under the John Mahama period of the power crisis that we had, luckily enough, I served on that committee, the low management committee. I served on that committee for 2 years. Now, nobody always knew the total amount of power that was supposed to be shared. But usually, GRICO will give you an outlook, a supply outlook for the day, based on their contact with the generators and then the demand of the country at that time. And if there's any deficit, they apportion this deficit among the distribution utilities and tell them to share the load. There are certain times that even though they will say that you should share, say, 200 megawatts, you come and realize that they have been able to get additional generation. And so instead of 200, you'll be sharing 100. So even though they may publish that Radio Gold and its environs will be off at a particular time, because you have gotten some extra 100 megawatts into the system, then Radio Gold and its environs may get life. You understand the point I'm trying to make? So you don't have an exact figure that will happen. It is usually a prediction. And based on that, you draw your load sharing timetable. So that point that he made was made purely based on ignorance. He didn't know what he was talking about. Two, Now, the issue of your second question had to do with
what you know is causing the problem.
Causing the problem. The issue basically is financial, as we speak now. Government simply, or maybe let's put it this way, yes, government simply cannot make money available for the utilities to be able to buy to take care of their operational costs. So, because of that, there's serious insolvency within the sector. They are unable to buy fuel. They are unable to buy spare parts for their maintenance. They are unable to do a lot of things. Indeed, if you see Gridco, for some months now, they've been going for overdrafts to even pay salaries. If you see Bui, they've been going for overdrafts to pay salaries. So if you have utilities going for overdrafts to pay salaries, do you think they can cover the operational costs? So that is the problem. So the problem is basically financial. And it is because of the fact that over the period, ECG has become inefficient, ECG has become corrupt, and that even the amount of power that they sell and get, the money that they get, instead of using it to pay all the players within the value chain through the cash waterfall mechanism, they have chosen to use them for procurement. And you and I know that it is only through procurement that you can enhance corruption.
And so the financial issue, and I want to understand the correlation between and the power light going off.
Yeah. So, for example, if you do not have money to buy fuel, you can't generate power because you need fuel to generate power. If you owe fuel suppliers and they say if you don't pay, we'll not give you fuel, you will not get that. If you have a generating plant that has a problem that needs to be fixed and you cannot get money to buy the spare parts, you cannot generate. If you have a situation where you're for all generating plants, you have what we call scheduled maintenance periods. And scheduled maintenance periods are factors within your insurance. So, for example, if I go to take an insurance on my generating plant, because it's a capital intensive investment, so I need to have an insurance on it. But the insurance company that provides you with that policy will also ensure that you must also meet your scheduled maintenance program. So if you are supposed to go for maintenance, say, every 5 months, and in 5 months, you don't go for maintenance, and you continue running, and maybe in the 6th or 7th or 8th month, you get a problem, your insurance policy will not cover it. You understand what I'm making? And so, because of the insurance policy cover for the various generating plants, because they do not have money to undertake routine maintenance, some of them are not ready to take up that risk. Because look, if you take up a risk where your generating plant, say, catches fire, and then boom, it goes, you have no insurance to cover it. You've lost all your investments. And so, because of the fact that they do not even get money that, for example, if you take, say, maybe Senate may supply power and give it to ECG. ECG does not pay Senate. So they are not able to buy fuel, or they are not able to even conduct their scheduled maintenance. They'll definitely stop generating power. And that's how you're going to get. So that is the link between the finance and the outages.
And I recall the last time I spoke to Kujopoku, one of the things, the assurances he gives, and I think the assurance was that by this time we shouldn't have issues with load being shared because somebody was doing routine maintenance. Maybe one of the power plants was doing routine maintenance or not. Is there a solution in sight?
Look, my brother, if you have a situation where even the financial regulator, that's PURC, is having issues with ECG, because nobody even knows how much ECG receives after the sale of power. Nobody knows. Because even though the government had given a directive to ECG that ran a single account, they are running about 37 accounts. When government appointed PricewaterhouseCoopers (PwC) to audit the cash waterfall mechanism, the accounts, when they got the ECG refused to give them data to be able to record. When you appoint an auditor, you must give the auditor all the data that the auditor needs to be able to do. They have refused. And you see, one thing I agree with Napo is that the resolution of power crisis is not an event, it's a process. But the process has not even started. The process has not even started because government is not honest enough to accept that there's a problem. It is only when they accept that there's a problem that they can go on to do that. And I will advise people who speak on behalf of government not to be giving timelines, because from where I sit and what I know, unless there's some miracle that comes to resolve this indebtedness, you will not have a solution in sight. And the part that is so sad is the fact that the government has succeeded in dividing the front of the independent power generators, because of the fact that they look at each other, they look at faces and say that if they know that they give you this amount of money, you will can generate. They give you and leave your other colleagues. And so now you have situations where some generating how do you call them again? Power companies are, instead of blaming people, blaming the distributor for not paying them for the power they generate, they are rather blaming other generators, for example, VRA. How on earth can the Chamber of Independent Power Producers be accusing VRA that the very reason why we are having do so is because of the fact that VRA is over exporting instead of meeting domestic needs? The person who is speaking that, because of where he works, look at the number of, they were supposed, if you look at the between August and January, they were supposed to pay 6 IPPs, a total amount of about 314 million Ghana cedis. They ended up paying only 120 million, and not to the 6 IPPs. They paid to 4 IPPs, and one of the IPPs they paid is where that gentleman who made that statement works. And so he has gotten money, and therefore he can sit there in the comfort of his room and rather blame a state agency who was not even given a dime. Go and look at the payment. You know that usually we have what we call the level A payments and the level B payments. The level A payments are the IPPs. Even though the level A payments were not even done fully, and out of 6, they only paid 4. And instead of 314 million Ghana cedis, they paid 120 million Ghana cedis. The level B, which is always the remainder of the money that is always shared among the utilities, that state-owned utilities, VRA didn't even get a dime. And 2, even Ministry of Finance, which was supposed to top up the money for them to pay the state-owned agencies, they were supposed to top up 200 million Ghana cedis. They did not do it. So VRA didn't even get a dime. And because you were paid, your company was paid, you have the temerity to look into the face of Ghanaians and say that VRA is over exporting, and that is the basis for which they do so. Look, my brother, that's for exports as we speak, and VRA is exporting based on contractual values. But for exports, VRA would have gone into insolvency by now. But they have not been paid.
You are saying VRA's main source of revenue is from the power they export?
Yes.
That they are not getting payments or power they supply internally?
Internally, go back and look at the audit. They got 0. VRA got 0. So from August to January, they were never paid. They were never paid. So it is the contract that they have. They have some contract to supply to Benin, to supply to Togo, and to supply. We have a power exchange agreement with Côte d'Ivoire. So they also supply. Sometimes when we have shortage of power, Côte d'Ivoire gives up because our networks are interlinked. So that's the responsibility of VRA to do those things. So you have about 50 megawatts going to this, that's what they do. And even with this kind of power crisis, if you look at VRA, they have cut down on their exports. And that is exactly what is even actually the small that is not still even get. Because that one, they charge in foreign currency. At least they're able to use that to keep them a bit afloat, to be able to manage to meet their operational costs. Meanwhile, they are the largest producer of power in this country. And meanwhile, they are not paid. If you look at the total amount of power that is produced, VRA alone is producing about 40% of it. And they are not being paid. So you don't have a chief executive who comes and tells you that chief executive of an independent power chamber of independent power who actually works in one of the utilities has the temerity to get up and indicate that the very reason why we're having load shedding is because VRA is over exporting. What kind of dishonesty is this?
And I'll conclude by asking you this question because you say you're talking about the fact that there are financial issues. That is suspect because for those of us who live in this area, around the Latebio, Koshi, going down to Sukura areas, we are currently part of a project by the ECG to change meters. And I'm not sure that comes cheap. That requires a lot of money to do. For a company that's not supposed to have money, they are spending money on changing meters. How is that possible?
So this is the point. It is part of so go back and look at the audit report. The audit report says that if you look at the cash waterfall mechanism, ECG after in the allocation of funds from the cash waterfall, ECG is entitled to 21.7%. The auditors are saying that ECG has spent more than 21.7% of the money even they saw. So it means that ECG has spent more than they are supposed to spend. Because the rest the extra that they have spent was supposed to be used in paying the other the other players within the value chain. So that's the point I was just making to you. Instead of paying their debt, they are rather using it in procurement. So what would they procure? They'll procure meters. If they procure meters, when they get a kickback, they'll procure this. That's what they are doing. That's what they are. See, the problem, part of the problem that we are facing now is as a result of indiscipline. So if around your neighborhood, you see that they are changing meters. Yes, they are changing meters because they are procured. I've always asked a very fundamental question. You borrow to feed your family. You borrow to even get water. You borrow to take your children to school. And you borrow to even take them to the hospital. If you get money, what do you do first? It's not to settle those debts. It is after you have finished settling those debts before you would think of about painting your house, isn't it? But you have ECG, instead of paying their debt, they have decided to paint their houses. That is what you are seeing in your area.
And that's why you predict that you're saying that they haven't even started solving the problem yet.
Yeah, they have not started solving the problem. All they are doing is first, they are spending a long time trying to defend the problem. And until you accept that there's a problem, and then ask people to support you to see how you can solve the problem, you will solve it.
Honorable, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Honorable Bawa is Member of Parliament for Bongo, responding to the comments that were made by the Energy Minister. Now, this is the view of Ghanaians on the street. In fact, we'll come to you. We'll pick calls. Your own response to what the Energy Minister is saying. But in the meantime, we've been speaking to some of you on the streets.
The minister